Okay, so we're recording now. Hello, everyone, including the possibly 2 people that ever go back and watch this. We're on the April 15th GitOps working group.
Sorry, that was me. That was me. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Someone had deleted the entire note.
Yeah, I accidentally did Control-A delete, and I was like, oh no, I didn't want to do that.
Perfect.
Sorry,
well, it's a good thing we're doing Google Docs ops in their version. So in any case, yeah, welcome to the GitOps working group meeting on April 15th, 2021 at 1800 GMT. And I'll go ahead and post the link to the notes in the chat. All right, so we're keeping it pretty informal here, but yeah, Dan, as you were just saying, it's kind of the Scott show because there's like 10 items that say Scott on here. It's just because I'm the only one that put items on. It's not, and in fact, these items—
It's because you're awesome, Scott. Take it away.
Be owned by other people. So yeah, exactly. I'm happy to do that. In fact, if anyone wants to, please do jump in. Oh, hey, William and Lothar, great. We just got started. So I'll paste the link again because I think one needs to do that in Zoom. So these are our notes. If you do have things that you want to mention, you don't have to put them at the end since I sort of stacked the deck here. Just go ahead and pop them in at the top even. And we'll go ahead and get to them. So the one thing that Cornelia wanted, or I said I would mention for Cornelia, is that someone from CDF was invited to be involved in, I believe in Getupscon. Let me just go back and double check this. Does someone have that handy?
Was this the person from, oh, what's the foundation called? It's a Child of the Linux Foundation. Yeah.
Do we have a CDF rep here?
We have, oh, there we go. Tracy Miranda to speak at GitOpsCon.
Hi, Tracy.
That's a rep. Oh, here you are. Hello.
Folks, I think the link you have on the website isn't quite up to date.
Ah, okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll update that. Did you get that from the Git repo, by the way? Oops, I think you're muted now.
Yeah, no, saying the one on the GitHub repo didn't work, but the one in Slack, I then found it after. Okay, so
there's actually an issue to a discussion rather that I started a while ago, but to replace our meeting notes in Git with the Google Doc because it seems to be a bit more immediately accessible for people. Does anyone have an objection to that? I sort of think not.
No, we had a few people shout about it when we started to do it because they're like, well, if you're not starting Git, are you even doing GitOps? And I think the
good point.
People were like, oh, okay, but
that's kind of silly. That's
yeah, I think it's
kind of silly.
It's pretty reasonable for us to use Google Docs to do Google Docs.
But I am actually, I am kind of voicing opposition to that, but not because we should use Git. The GitHub repo is the landing page for the project. It's kind of typical for working groups. I just think the link was wrong. And I do not want to jump the agenda, but the one thing that I have to offer at the top level, because I've been working on the principals committee and some other places, I'm finding that the meeting cadence and the scheduling is a little chaotic. And for anybody with a lot of meetings like me, it's really difficult to stay on top of it. I think at this point, we might want to just establish regular meeting times with persistent Zoom links, and we might find it's easier for people to contribute that way. So I don't know if you want to put like and I don't even know if this is like formal committee, like if you want to amend the agenda or whatever, but just, I mean, I would like to discuss that with the group.
Yeah, please pop that on the agenda. I mean, actually, you just raised it. That's great. But let's pop it on so we have some notes.
Okay.
I can respond to it very. Oh, sorry, Christian, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, there is a there's an issue on Git that I opened, I think specifically about meeting times, that as well. So I'll drum up the link and I'll put it in the Google Doc as well, so we can track it there as well. But yeah, well, you know, again, we're probably jumping all over the place, so I'll just wait a little bit until we get that down to the agenda.
Well, so those are a couple of housekeeping things, and that's good to bring up. But okay. Well, what I started to mention is that Cornelia had invited Tracy. This is the first agenda item. Tracy to, if I am getting this right, to speak at Getupscon as a representative of the CD Foundation. Hi, Tracy.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I recognize some faces in here. Nice to see you all. But yeah, no, I think in general, like we've got various GitOps activities happening in the CD Foundation, and then there's this working group, and I think behind the scenes, like myself, Tracy Reagan, and Cornelia Davis are just trying to make sure we connect the dots so everybody's talking to each other. And I think it's great to have everybody talk about GitOps and pushing different initiatives, as long as we just keep everyone aware of what's happening in the different communities. So yeah, I'd love to just pop along to this group occasionally and just act as that bridge to CDF. And Cornelia invited me along as well to speak at GitOpsCon. So yeah, happy to take any input from this group on anything particular they'd like to see. But yeah, I can talk about CDF and the activities in that space, and potentially how we can kind of view it evolving.
Yeah, do you want to start with maybe a quick intro to GitOps Summit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let me get a link as well. But in the Continuous Delivery Foundation, one of the topics over the past year that's had a lot of attention, so like when we ask our ambassadors, or we ask folks to submit topics for the podcast, for the blogs, we'd always get a lot on GitOps. So as a result, as we're planning CDCon, which is our annual conference, and this will be the second one we have running in June, we put out a specific track as GitOps and Cloud Native CD. So we asked people to put in submissions, and that track was just overwhelmed with a ton of submissions on GitOps topics. So much so that we said, actually, maybe it makes sense to spin this out into a separate dedicated track branded with GitOps so folks can find it more easily. And then we also reached out to CNCF, Priyanka and Chris, and said, what do you think about joining in on this so we can host it together? So just to try to avoid confusion about, what's involvement. So that led to GitOps Summit, and I'm going to drop the link in here. So we've got the schedule put out, and one of the main things we want to do, we have a keynote, and Dan's going to participate in that. We've got Cornelia Davis and Tracy Reagan, and the idea in that one is particularly to not just talk about the why of GitOps, but also make the connection with continuous delivery, and just put together the perspective of how all these things work together and are complementary. And then, yeah, we have a range of other talks just covering different areas, from secret managements to databases and things like that. And then on top of that, we do have some more GitOps talk in the main CDCon program. And additionally, what I'd also offer is we look to have our conferences pretty interactive, and the most popular sessions tend to be birds of a feather sessions. So if this group would like some time at the main CD conference to host a birds of a feather session, we'd love to offer you space to have a 30 or 40-minute open discussion. It tends to have a lot of newbies just coming along and saying, what's going on? But it's a great way to kind of onboard new people and get them, just grow awareness of the group. So yeah, I'd love to extend that invitation if we can get a couple of moderators to commit to leading that session. All right, I'll pause there, take questions or.
Great. Let's just for housekeeping again. Let's Does everyone feel comfortable going back to the raising hands process? Okay, great. Brees.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether you could give us a quick summary of some of the other activities the CDF is involved in that might be relevant to the GitOps working group.
Like just the general special interest groups or projects.
Anything else that's going on in the CDF that might be relevant to us as a working group?
Yeah. So I think let's say the most active group in CDF in terms of special interest groups is the interoperability group. So we have lots of like-minded folks who are driving for different ways we can standardize aspects of the CD process. So some examples are they're looking at things around standardized metadata of saying, okay, can we standardize the way release metadata is specified across tools like Spinnaker or Jenkins X or anything really, it doesn't have to be a CDF project. And then one of the interesting things that spun out of that group was a dedicated effort on standardizing events in CI and CD. So now we have a group called Event SIG, very confusing because it's not conference events, but this just was no better name. But they're looking at establishing kind of a default set of events and event protocols that we can all use. And so the CDF projects are involved. There's folks like from CNCF, like the Captain folks who are heavily involved. And yeah, we're looking to see if we can drive towards a kind of a minimum set of standardized events, which I think could be super interesting. And one of the things we're really trying to get everybody aligned on because it just opens up a lot of possibilities. And then other things as well that's coming up related in the interoperability spaces, a lot of discussion around SBOM or software bill of materials. And again, just the interoperability aspects of it. So we had a presentation today on Spdx. And again, we're looking at CI/CD metadata and making sure that can evolve with the Spdx format. And as we kind of just look to say how there's just so much overlap in different tools and just a lot of room for standardization. So I guess similar efforts as happening in this group, but just in, I guess, adjacent areas. But yeah, happy to share details. So if anyone wants a kind of introduction to folks in those groups, happy to make that.
Thank you, that's awesome.
I just want to raise my hand for myself for a second and just thank you, Tracy, as well. I personally am very excited to that you are able to join us so that we can have some public bridging of these communities. I realize, as you said, there has been some behind the scenes bridging, which is not very nice, but it's nice to be able to do it so that anyone can access. So I really appreciate and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, and yeah, just feel free to reach out to me if there's any way we can help or any folks we can bring together, or even if we want to, I don't know, like put the agenda things, we can add it to the CDF calendar if you want to get more interest or things like that.
Great, yeah, and vice versa, cool. Okay, so then we can always circle back to that if something comes back up, but I think the next item on the list that Jesse added, well, I know you had just mentioned it, but do we want to circle back on this to the recurring meetings and just kind of touch on this for a bit, or do we feel like we've kind of covered it for the moment?
I'd like to start there.
Okay.
I don't know if I need to raise my hand, but we do have, you raised an issue that we need to move our calendar to the community. So the place where we have the calendar in the CNCF is not the place that it should be in. Then there's also the issue from Christian that's related. So I think we just need to come up with a plan and execute on it.
I agree. I've been wanting to propose that we have a set day and time. We have, at least for these working group meetings, we do announce them in advance enough so that and they have been on a regular cadence with the exception of today that was moved to today. So that's fairly regular. the chaotic feeling I think that Jesse mentioned is, I can say, I agree, but it's not, I don't think it's due to a lack of organization. I think it's due to the interested parties that want to be involved in the various things that are happening, which some of these things that are happening quicker and less expectedly than we thought they would, have been already ad hoc forming into some groups to help take care of them. So for example, the GitOpsCon was not planned long in advance. It was an opportunistic thing. So I mean that positively, you know, so because of that, and given the schedules of the folks involved, we've made a doodle calendar to try to get the right time. And I think that we have pretty close to settled on, we've settled on a good short range of time slots. And I think we're getting closer to being able to pick a consistent day, wouldn't you say, Dan? And Christian, at least that's what my impression from our last GitOpsCon meeting, GitOpsCon working group meeting. We at least, I know it's my task to make a doodle poll given 3 time slots over 4 days, and we'll see. And I'm hoping that we can say, great, let's just continue to pick this. But it is a very short run thing, so so that may not last. The only other meeting that has been interjected in here is the principal sync meetings that was proposed, and so far everyone seems to feel that that's a very important thing to do. And to keep participation open and high, that has been a unique doodle poll availability poll every single week. So for me, it feels a bit much to manage, but it's, I understand for other people, it would be nice to have a single date. It's just that not everyone has agreed that there would be a good time yet. And we had hoped that that would be short-lived. And I'm still hoping that won't continue on forever. So I'm open-minded if anyone has ideas of how to move forward with that.
Yeah, I'll take the floor real quick, only because I had my hand raised, and also because it'll be short. So my only thing is that I think the ad hoc stuff is fine, especially it's just growing pains, right? As we're trying to grow the group. And again, like, you know, Scott being in the GitOpsCon committee thing, and a lot of this was opportunistic, so we just kind of had to get things quick. I do think, though, going back to my issue on GitHub, is that I think if we have a calendar, even like if I can't make every meeting, that's still at least a public place where people can go and say, oh, hey, you know, the CFP people are meeting this day and I can make it and I want to be part of that. And at least, you know, when their changes happen, I can subscribe to that individual calendar. And if changes happen, it'll change automatically. And then I can be like, oh, I can't make it, or, oh, I can make it. I think it goes back to that original issue is like, we should have a central calendar that we can, as a working group, subscribe to. So, and I think that'll at least alleviate a lot of the issues in kind of the whole kind of the craziness that it kind of feels like right now. So,
thanks, Christian. Dan.
So I think that what that chaotic feeling in part probably comes from the fact that we have these subcommittees. We have a committee that's focused on putting together the principles. And I think whoever we appoint to run the committee, and I actually don't even remember who we put in charge of that committee. I know that I'm supposed to be running the website committee. I haven't done very much on it yet. So the website committee is very not chaotic at all. It's just a ghost town. But whoever's running that, just take it and go, you know, set your meetings and do your stuff and execute your committee. So I don't think it has to have any impact on the way that we do our cadences. But I think just in order of operations, like we probably need to make a decision, what's our regular cadence going to be? And then make sure that we have it publicized in one calendar that we pick, and then make sure that we have a proper Zoom link. And I know, Scott, you've been actually trying to get us to move to the new calendar. I don't know what the blocker is. Do we need like weigh in? Because several people gave thumbs up, or are we just good to go and do it?
It was only a weigh-in. That was it. I don't think I received any feedback on it until now, so I didn't want to bully it.
Yeah. No, I don't think for something like that, like moving the calendar, let's just shoot ahead, and someone can get it. Go throw stuff in the way if you don't want us to do it, but let's just do it. And then, do we have an official CNCF Zoom link that we should be using instead of another one?
Well, yes. So the account, this is through the CNCF GitOps Working Group Zoom account, and I have that set up right now inside of our Keybase account to share. And I'll connect folks with it. The other thing is there's just a couple of, I mean, again, very preliminary things like how do we securely share things? So that is one way that we have provisionally. There's also another issue to, I mean, some of this is so detailed and almost to the point of being potentially nauseating for everyone interested in GitOps. Some of this is just about setting up the basic organizational stuff. So getting, an open source 1Password account is on the agenda. I just wanted to wait until we have the CNCF officially change the name of the Sandbox project first. And that was the only reason.
With the amount of minutia, should we divert this to just like a subcommittee thing and just be like, you know what, the co-chairs, we can just go and take all this minutia and just work it out between the three of us and just get it all done, and we'll get the calendars updated. And I don't think anybody's going to get mad at us because we moved the calendar and set up a process. I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on it with a larger group.
I completely agree. The difference, the main thing is we have not had chairs until very recently. And so now we're setting that up, and there's also PR to update the governance around that. So we don't need to be blocked, I don't think, on doing this kind of thing on that, but I just wanted to at least air that publicly. So, okay, cool. We'll unless anyone objects, we'll go ahead and proceed with those things and get on to the meat of stuff that people actually care about. Do I have other items on the list that can just be nixed for that reason? I'm glad we covered it at least a bit.
Principal sync session in progress.
Yeah, so the main thing is...
But Jesse has his hand raised. I don't know if we want to come back to that.
Sorry, Jesse, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the original thing that I brought up, clarify that chaotic didn't mean negative. I'm not throwing shade. It's just hard to stay on top of it. We've had like 4 of these top level working group meetings. I've missed 2. One was the wrong link and the meeting was canceled. And today I almost missed because the link was wrong. So I had a PR in the old repo that got nixed that was just literally like, we meet once a month on Thursdays at this Zoom channel, at the Zoom link. Like, we could just change it to that. I don't think we have to over rotate on the minutia. And I totally agree with it. The committee meetings are separate, but I feel like this working group can set some guidelines for committees. I think the committees are of this group. So I don't think it's entirely out of scope how they meet, when they meet. And frankly, I've got a little frustration there in that, like, I've missed half those too. And the ones I miss, there seems to be somebody that misses the ones that I attend that has opposite opinions. So we're ping ponging on a couple of things, and it's why, don't know. So I'm just sort of like, but I get it. This is sort of the ad hoc beats in action, like, just make it happen. I'm totally down with that. Just maybe more on Slack and more, because the other thing here is that in these meetings, everything happens and then it's for reference. And in committee meetings, we've adopted that too. So it's like we lock docs, you can't do anything out of a meeting. So I think my initial like scope of bringing this up was just to say, I think we're getting established enough that we need a little more establishment. But that's it. And we can defer, we can pick it up on Slack too and just talk about it. I'd be happy to help anyway.
think we've only got thumbs up for that. Awesome. Okay, so that folds pretty neatly into the principal sync session update. I just wanted to give a quick update about that. That's one of the, I suppose you could say, committees. It's not really a committee. It's more just interested parties who want to help work on the foundation, on the first version of the foundational principles of GitOps that are published by the GitOps working group. They're initially taken from the earlier principles that were, I know Boris had worked on them long ago, and several others, I'm not sure on this call, but have worked on those, and they are in need of an update. So that's what we got started initially. The pull request that you were mentioning, Jesse, I think a number of people said that it was too long. My experience personally in the past is that, you know, almost 100 comments on a pull request does not make it unmanageable. You know, I think many of us, like people involved in the Kubernetes community, can have been involved in pull requests where they can go on for a very long time. The point is to make progress. So we decided, I proposed having live sync sessions just to help that along, not to lock anyone out of participating. The document that's you can use during the sync sessions is locked in between the sync sessions. So that's that. It doesn't, you know, no one should be excluded because they can't make a date. And that's why we had the open doodle poll. I think I just want to address one thing, is that we have, in the last 2 meetings, been somewhat locked on a specific topic. And we had not formalized any way of making decisions during this. It was just somewhat informal. So because of that, it's not that I don't think any of us could anticipate that could happen, but I didn't necessarily think we needed to do it that quickly. Sounds like we do. So Dan and Leonardo and I met about this right after the meeting, and I'm just giving a quick update. And this issue was created as a place to discuss the one issue publicly, as opposed to using live meeting, you know, an hour continual over and over for an unknown period of time to do that. So we all agree that dissenting opinions are important, and general consensus is important. Everyone's opinion matters. At the same time, we do have goals that we want to reach, and we need to make sure to have ways of moving forward. So please comment on this this discussion. I think it says it all right there, but I want to highlight this part that asks folks to give their viewpoints in as succinct a way as possible. And hopefully that will help, and we can make sure that we don't accidentally get into bike shedding there. So the only other update I have, and I'm sorry if this is going on a bit too long, is that we do not have a deadline for this. I updated the timeline to say date TBD for the first version of the principles. I'm hoping, however, we can that in general they're non-controversial enough to get to a first version before too long. That's it.
See, Jesse, you've got your hands raised.
Yeah, I could start talking. I don't know if we're doing the hands thing.
We
agree.
are. I was just introducing the topic. Unfortunately, every topic here has my name on it. So if someone wants to take one, I'll be happy to pass it along.
I love that we dropped the time. I think it's really great. And the context for that is basically we need to work it until it's done, not work it until a date. I think that's great. I'm curious to know within this working group, how we view this particular PR. So as you said, we had discussed this around number 3, and specifically the term continuous. It went through 2 principals meetings, and it seemed like we had made progress, and then we reverted that progress based on people being able to attend. I think relatedly, I just want to make one observation. If someone has a typical meeting load of 4 to 8 meetings a day, a doodle poll doesn't help, because what happens is it comes in and you can say, oh, I can make these times, and then the next week those might change because you're not blocked anything off. Speaking personally, I can't block off 8 things and hope that one lands, so it doesn't super work. But that's kind of part of the problem. So I'm wondering, with this PR, will this land as advice to the principals, not committee or whatever, the pseudo committee? I mean, will this land as like, okay, whoever shows up here, we're going to look at this, we're going to take all of the +1s and the thumbs and say, this is what we're doing?
Yeah, so there's a plan outlined at the top of that PR that essentially says that.
I think you mean it's a discussion, right? Rather than a PR.
Yeah,
Just
it's a discussion. Sorry. Yep. It is a discussion.
Sorry, maybe I misunderstood what you were saying. You were asking about the principal sync meetings and whether they were going to...
No, I'm asking about this discussion. Thank you, Brees. It is a discussion. The usage of continuous in GitOps principle number 3, right? So this is coming to this working group. It's getting surfaced out of that committee to get more input.
Yes.
I don't see anything in this discussion that proposes we'll collect data here and make a decision at the next meeting, et cetera. And I don't want to close gates, and I do not want to leave voices out. However, I do want to come to resolution. As experience in a couple of previous working groups, at least my personal experience has been, the longer you draw out on terminology, the more it becomes about the terminology, and the more everybody's surprised you're bike shedding. Continuous is important. This is an important one. This is not bike shedding. However, I do want to, I think, want to use the context of this larger scoped group to say, well, what's the plan here? And I think I know, but.
Okay, cool. Brees?
Yeah, for the continuous things, sorry, I kind of lost the original point. I think you made it before I did, Jesse. But the continuous thing, I think we've already moved it out, right? So we can move on with the actual work of Principle 4 and do the continuous things offline in the discussion. And then the working group, the committee for the principles can pick that up and integrate it in a future meeting. So we've kind of moved that offline so that we can progress. So we should hopefully see more progress. Point number 1. Point number 2, the reason we do a doodle poll every week is because we have a lot of people in very different time zones, and it's quite hard to find one regular slot that accommodates for everybody. So if we pick a meeting slot that's the same every week or whatever, we risk having people completely excluded. I think that was the original one, so I don't know how to resolve that. And the third one is, I think it would be a really good thing to be able to present the kind of an initial draft at Getupscon EU, which is going to happen soon. That's, I think, the next the GitOps working group conference. That might be what we might want to think of as a goal for the committee, for the principals committee, to be able to present something to the rest of the community then, if that makes sense.
Can I ask for clarification, or but actually I feel like a rebuttal, actually a little bit, a friendly one. So just to the meeting thing, I don't want to get pedantic about this, but I will say that, like, next week, if you throw a doodle poll out and I have to pick times, right now I have tons of space in my calendar that will fill up. So I don't mean that we should be exclusive, right? That's not the point. And I absolutely want as many people to contribute as possible. I think we just have to cut the loss around whether dynamic every week is better than being able to plan every week.
Oh, man, I would much rather have a regular meeting too.
Yeah. No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I missed one this past one that I would not have missed because I would have blocked it in my calendar. Other people that would miss you know what I'm saying? Like, everybody might be in that boat. So that's one. And I guess we can just put that to rest and let the co-chairs figure it out. Are you saying that number 3 is now resolved? That's the more important thing.
So the principle 3 isn't resolved. Principle 3 is there's still a lack of consensus, right? I think I'm going to phrase it like that. There's lack of consensus. I think in order for us to progress and actually do something useful, we've moved, it's worth moving the discussion offline, right? And so not
That's
block us
perfect.
when we've got synchronous meeting, because synchronous meetings are actually very expensive. Everybody has to schedule around them, etc. So if we move the discussion offline, we can do asynchronous discussion. It's much cheaper for us to participate in.
I thank you for clarifying. I might be the only one that heard it, but I heard you say we've moved continuous out so we can move on without it, rather than we've moved that blocker out of the committee and we can move on before. So thank you for clarifying.
Does that reflect what your understanding is, Scott and Dan, who were at those meetings? And
it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does. Thank you for that.
Especially because the disagreement, the objections seem to be held basically by one person, and so the discussion that we had afterwards was, well, consensus doesn't mean that it has to be unanimous,
Right.
but we want to make sure that if we have something that's like, okay, one person is bringing up an issue, we want to hear that, we want to document it, and let's put it into a discussion place where they can advocate for it and people can jump in and help out, and maybe they can gain momentum there, and then people will say, oh yeah, this all makes sense. But in the meantime, it's like, well, your objection's important, it's valid, let's document it, and it's a caveat that we can address. But at the moment, we have broad consensus to just move forward with what we have and try to get to these other items. And I don't know, Scott, you're raising your own hand, but you're moderating, so I don't know how you want to do it.
Yeah, I was just going to call them. Basically, Zoom lists the people in order, and I'm not always quick on the draw to get the right person. I'm sorry about that. I'll do better. But yeah, so I raised my hand just to add a quick note to direct folks to my alternative meeting proposal in the chat. So we can async this if we want to, but that's something that's been helpful in other projects, and maybe we should just go ahead and move to like an early and a late meeting and call it a day. But I'm just going to throw that out there, and I put it in the meeting notes. So if anyone has objections or they like it, then maybe thumbs up or whatever. And we'll take that into consideration as we move forward into next week. Okay, cool. Brice?
Yeah, really quick. I think also one of the issues is some of the points we're making in that working group, in that committee, are actually quite subtle and complex. And just a quick voice conversation might not get to the root of them. So moving that to a written discussion might actually be helpful in clarifying exactly what people mean, having definitions, and having much more clarity. I think there's a genuine objection, and getting to the bottom of it isn't going to happen by voice. So the text should hopefully help us a fair amount.
Perfect. Thank you, Miranda, for that. For the form. That is awesome to know. So does someone mind popping that into the notes? That would be very helpful.
Yep, already done.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Okay, the next agenda item, again, please stop me if I'm going to try to fly through these ones. The Sandbox project renaming has been, there has been consensus on this. It is to be called Open GitOps, and the infrastructure for that is set up. The CNCF onboarding is in progress. There's just a few additional things to do. Mainly I's dotted and T's crossed. There are assets, artwork assets already committed to the GitOps working group repo. So please check those out. And I think that's probably it for that, unless anyone has any specific questions about the relationship between the project and the working group. Okay. The next agenda item is really quick. Is just that please see the teams and project boards under the GitOps working group. I'm sorry, you can't actually see the teams, but you can, unless you're part of the organization, because GitHub. But we can document those, and we probably should quickly. In fact, I'll make an agenda item for myself to do that, unless someone else wants to take it. but please see the project boards, because that was, I didn't really do any of it this week, but the several weeks before, I kind of organized a bunch of the issues and items from our different meetings into project boards. So keep in mind, I'm not a full-time project manager, but and this is something that we're all sharing now. But I just wanted to point you to that so that when folks are thinking, hey, we need some more organization, we're not reinventing the wheel here, we can actually follow up there. And that's it. Christian?
Yeah, let me find the unmute button. So I'll take this, so that way Scott can take a little break there. So update on the Getupscon EU 2021. Our CFPs are still open until tomorrow. We got an update today that we have 20 talks submitted, so that's pretty good. It essentially doubled overnight. So I think the same thing that always happens with every CFP is all of them come at the end. So we're closing that, and the committee will be voting on talks and finalizing the agenda for Getupscon EU. In the document there, we are tracking everything via projects. Probably I need to update that sometime today. Of what's been going on there, and so I think that's it for the update. There's no other new things that came out of that. We put in the if you look in the working group meetings, we did highlight what went on in that meeting, and we do have a planning doc there. So if you want to check out what's going on, it's down there. So I'll pause there for any questions or comments on that. All right, cool. All right, Scott, your break is over, I guess.
Okay, great. And I'm actually moving some of the topics around briefly so that I'm not, I already covered some of them together. Okay, great. I don't need to get too into the logos, but just so that you know what I was talking about when I say they're in the assets directory here, here's a direct link. So if it's not clear, the GWG is an acronym for GitOps Working Group, and the OGO is for the Open GitOps Project. And those are there, and the source files are there as well, and they can all have an update. Probably the one thing I just want to mention is that the Open GitOps logo is probably the only one that CNCF will want inside of the top level artwork repo, because that's the Sandbox project. Most working groups don't have their own logos. We're kind of like, we're kind of cool in that way, I guess. But I don't think CNCF needs that in their artworks directory, but we can always ask Chris. So, okay. The only other note is that I just wanted to let people know that we can actually answer discussions now, or sorry, answer proposal type discussions within GitHub discussions. I just edited that so that we can, because I think it was getting a little confusing for folks when you couldn't get an actual answer. I noticed that on several of the discussions, 3 or 4 of us tried to give like an actual answer at different points, just because people kept asking questions. So we can mark them as such, and I did on a few. So. What else? There's only one other topic that I had. I'm sure we probably have other things that we want to discuss, but when I mentioned that there was a PR for simplifying and updating the governance, that is linked here. So I'll go ahead and post it also in Zoom. But oops. Well, anyway, I guess I won't do that right now. But yeah, so please check that out if you're interested. There's a few different things that are relevant. So for example, I think Chris, this would be relevant to you. I would really very much like your input on this. Or sorry, Chris Sanders, I mean, and others whom this affects. It's basically, if you look at the main thing is this. I'll share my screen very briefly, if that's okay So if we look at our timeline, can everyone read the text?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we look at our timeline right now, so the initial group was formed. I don't want to give a whole history here, but basically last year, right, last November. The initial formation of the group was intended to happen in Q4 of 2020, which did happen. There was an initial GitOps working group charter. That's a Google Doc that was not really, didn't go anywhere beyond that. That was a place where folks, where interested parties listed themselves as well as the notes from everything that happened there. I'll just skip over the principles because we talked about it before. That's date TBD. The next item is to clearly establish governance. That's also date TBD. This discussion that it's linking to has been followed up with a pull request, and this the pull request, let's see, I think is linked here. There we go. The pull request is linked here, and I would just encourage folks to take a look at this. Primarily, what it does is it updates what we did have as a bootstrapping process. That was a little bit confusing because the GitOps working group intended to have a sandbox project, but during the review, the CNCF, the TOC review, it was mentioned that, hey, this isn't really a wonderful name for it. And everyone said, yes, that's true. Let's work that out as we go. And so we have done that with the Open GitOps project. We now do have chairs. We did have provisional people that were listed as maintainers who did take the lead on this, which is very helpful and actually lend credibility and help with the project. I would love if those folks, for example, including you, Chris, could continue to help with that kind of thing. But we need to figure out kind of how that fits within the governance structure. And we need to make sure that this actually works as a real working group. So this is a proposal for that. There may be a couple of other things that we want to add, but that's I just wanted to introduce you to it. And please take a look. So I guess I'll stop sharing my screen. And are there any other, does anyone have any questions about that? Or are there any other things that we mentioned before that people want to circle back on? Or are there any other topics? Dan has his hand raised.
Yeah, I was a little actually confused about what you were saying about the maintainers. I actually, the parts that I was focusing on was like voting and those kinds of things. But does this governance PR get rid of maintainers?
Yes, it does currently, because working groups generally don't have, well, it depends. You know, working groups, like a project will generally have maintainers. A working group doesn't generally have maintainers, and as such.
What was your, so was that the main reason that you were thinking of, just like the maintainers were the people that basically bootstrap? Because I'm also thinking about like merging future pull requests in here, and like right now it requires maintainers to do it. So what would the alternative process be?
Yeah. Well, you can have maintainers per repo if you want that. Generally chairs are part of unless it's a highly complex structure, generally chairs, or whether you have an oversight committee or whatever, are also maintainers, and they just have an additional role of helping to, say, moderate meetings and the other things that are on the other responsibilities that are on that list. And that's really it.
So I might, I can follow up with you offline. I'm getting my head around it and thinking about it, because I also think that like the maintainers that we do have, people from Amazon, people from GitHub, those things really, I mean, for better or for worse, it actually adds a lot of credibility to the project. So I don't know. I'll discuss with you offline, and we can keep talking about it. And the maintainers basically will all have to vote and agree to the PR. So We'll have to figure that out.
And this is precisely why I mentioned it in this meeting, and we'll also be publicizing. You know, it's a rather, you know, any pull request to governance requires folks that are existing on the governance to be involved. Basically, it's an invitation to say, hey, do we want to add an additional level of folks? Do we want to just broaden the maintainer list, or how do we want to do this? So.
One thought I have, Scott, listening into that conversation yesterday, is that it seems like you need to be able to move forward. Like, this is my first foray with open source. Okay, so having consensus is awesome, but also you need to move forward. And so there needs to be some way to sort of not table, but like put on the side screen these issues that, you know, one or very few people have, and somehow move forward with the doc that most people agree with, so we can actually get to the important things. You know, the terminology for that is really not why the group was formed, right? It's so that we can come up with these reference architectures that you know, all kinds of people can refer to. So I think that's the main thing I'm really curious about, is how do you finally get to say, okay, we're stopping discussion, here's what it's going to look like. We will, you know, register the disagreement, and is there a way to say, here's the official doc, but oh, there's a disagreement on this piece, and, you know, people can read that if they want to? I don't know if there's a process for that.
I can actually answer that quickly. There is officially a process for it right now in the governance doc. The reason that it seems a little bit confusing is the governance doc was initially, it was a placeholder. It was copied from the Flux governance document, which I helped to author. That was appropriate to that project because it not only represented how the project was functioning and the processes that it required, but also what those existing maintainers wanted, and made sure that that was balanced with what was fair. What that did was it gave a process that was a little bit complex, that we don't really need for this working group. So that was why there was the recommendation that I made, the recommendation to simplify it. And so far, everyone has said, yes, we totally agree. We might kind of revise that based on how some of those discussions went. You know, because for example, this PR right now strips out some of those decision-making processes as kind of unnecessary details, but we might actually want to keep them or something close to them to do what you're talking about, Chris.
I mean, one possibility with these is to say that, you know, these are living documents and they're going to change with time. Here's, though, at this point, we have a doc and this is it, but you can, you know, make comments on it as time goes on. And so folks can read the comments, read the discussions, but it allows us to get past onto other things. So I'm not sure where I was going with that, whether, you know, something like the original maintainers are a group that can say, yeah, you know, thumbs up or thumbs down to something. And they're sort of like a group that can say, yeah, we're going to move on to the next piece. If that's not enough consensus, then fine, we can broaden it out. But
personally, that makes sense to me. And I think based on yesterday, that pull request will be updated to just add back that maintainers file and then just suggest broadening it to include the chairs. Yeah.
Also on those long, like Bruce did a great job with that doc, but it's so long and there's lots of details, like breaking it into chunks. So we can have little check boxes. Do we agree with this chunk? Check, all done. Move on to the next one. Check. Oh, no, red mark here. We're going to look at this one more. So.
Do you mean for the maintainers document, or did you mean for the principles document?
The principles.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. We don't really have the tool, but that sounds like a quite useful tool to put together quickly for this. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're out of agenda items. In fact, I think we are at time. So are there any other burning notes that people wanted to add, or action items, or anything that is important before we wrap up?
No, feel free to add them. I got to jump off, but I volunteered for moderation next time. Thank you, Scott. You've done 95% of the work so far, so really appreciate it. I'll try to step up and help. My role has changed now, so I have more time to focus on this. So looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
We all tag team at different times. That sounds perfect to me. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.